Welcome to College Admissions Toolbox, giving you the edge you need to get into the colleges of your dreams, with your host, Steve Schwartz. That's me. Today, we're talking with Dan Stern. Welcome to College Admissions Toolbox, Dan. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm awesome, thanks. I'm so excited to feature you. You've done quite a bit. You're the founder of College Essay Organizer, a web tool used by thousands and thousands of people worldwide, helping them with their college essays, and that kind of grew out of your experience with Metro Academic Prep, which is your Manhattan-based tutoring and college prep company. Tell us a little bit more about you.
Well, first of all, thank you for this opportunity. This is really fun. I love having the chance to speak directly to kids and their parents who are going through this process. It's become this crazy, frenetic, anxious experience that, quite honestly, can be very straightforward, and without sounding too corny, it can be fun. You're applying to college. You're not applying to prison. It should be framed in that context, and they should keep that mentality throughout. And podcasts like these are great because, again, it goes to the whole philosophy of keeping, just a focused, well-paced attitude throughout. I know it sounds corny again, but like problem well organized is a problem half solved. Getting all the information is really useful. And that's really what College Essay Organizer is about, making sure that people are organized so that they can focus all their efforts and their energy on the real important creative stuff. I was working with this student years ago. Josh, if you're listening, it's you. Basically, I was working with him about 8 years ago, and I helped him on SAT prep and worked with him on physics and just helped him with writing skills in general. And he said, once he had gotten into Stanford, he basically said, thank you. You were really so helpful. You guided me through the SAT. You helped me with my courses in school. But the most useful thing you did for me was design that little college essay roadmap that showed me all my different essay requirements from the start, because I thought there was just one essay from the very beginning. Because you listen to your school counselors, you read the standard articles that come out in magazines and publications every year on a seasonal basis, and they talk to students. They tell people about the college essay or the personal statement as this monolithic thing that's really just one story. When in reality, even over the last 6 or 7 years, the whole process has changed dramatically, and most students have a multitude of essays they have to write. In this case, that student Josh actually had 27 different essays to write.
Oh my God.
Which is actually not that uncommon when you have short take questions, optional questions, obviously required questions, program specific questions for, particular departments and programs. And then of course, scholarship essay questions. They add up. And year after year, I see students who just miss the opportunity to even apply to college because they didn't know certain college essay requirements existed. And they have to forego submitting their application simply because they can't write that essay or, those 4 essays in a few hours when the deadline is approaching. So College Essay Organizer really grew out of the need to, one, let students and parents know that there is so much more to this process than they might be envisioning from the start. And two, streamline them through that process so they can save time, avoid procrastination, not completely, we all procrastinate, but minimize that procrastination and really figure out how to spend the majority of their time on the creative facet of writing their essays as opposed to just getting organized. And I'll just give one specific example to highlight what I mean about, how so many of the essays are how the essay process is just growing in terms of its breadth. NYU, very popular college that students apply to. NYU takes the Common App. On the Common App supplement for NYU, there is one required essay listed. It basically changes a little bit year to year, but essentially says, why are you applying to NYU? If you are applying to one of the many programs that NYU has, whether it's Gallatin or Stern or Tisch, and many students apply to those programs, you're looking at possibly, 2 or 3 additional required essays for that program, not one of which is even mentioned, let alone listed on the supplement or the application itself. Many students fail to write those essays. They try to submit their applications, and then they hit the deadline and find out that they're not really an applicant because they didn't submit all the requirements. Why it's evolved like this, where the application doesn't include all the essay requirements, is beyond me. But very rarely does anything in the college admissions world make sense. And this fits perfectly into that paradigm. So our goal, like I said, is to kind of give students all the information they need from the start so they can work smarter.
Well, that sounds like an incredibly useful tool, and it's not surprising at all to me to hear that Josh out there found this to be the most useful tool for him in organizing his college essays. So thanks so much for creating this. I encourage everyone to check it out, and we'll have a link to it in the show notes for this episode.
Excellent.
Now, Dan, you've worked with a lot of students. And one thing we love to hear on College Admissions Toolbox are stories. Could you take us to the worst moment you've seen in the college admissions process, working with a student? Maybe it's related to the college essay in some way potentially, and share with us that story.
Do you mind if I share a couple of stories?
Oh, please do. The more the better.
I mean, the worst for me personally and professionally ties into the whole roots of College Essay Organizer, which was essentially when a student was applying to USC and was applying to the film program. And honestly, that kid was a directorial prodigy. He was just like really gifted in cinematic arts, and I was so excited for him to attend that program. And he called me at like 11:30 the night before the deadline and said, I just went online and found out that there are 2 other essays I have to write for these programs. And he's like, why didn't you tell me about them? And I was like, I thought to myself, I didn't know they existed. And I thought there's got to be some website out there that shows you all the information so you can't possibly overlook it. And that student wasn't able to submit his application on time, and I felt terrible. But I've seen so many mistakes students make. I mean, you've heard about the classic ones when students, say, like write this essay and finish it off with something like, and that's why I can't wait to attend the University of Wisconsin. And they're, of course, applying to the University of Michigan.
Of course.
I've seen I think one of the greatest misconceptions students have is that a great essay is the same thing as a great college admissions essay. I had one student who wrote one of the most phenomenal pieces of prose I'd ever read, but it was about how he had broken into the school's computer system and changed his transcript grades, and how he, essentially was suspended for that. And it was a funny, brilliant essay that showed his intelligence and his drive, but is that really how you want to present yourself to the college?
You don't want to necessarily highlight that.
Right, like, hey, I'm a felon. Which dorm am I going to be living in? But I think, the main thing that students, like the biggest mistake students make is that they work so hard on their college, on their transcript, working so hard for 3.5 years in high school, work so hard on their test prep, spend thousands of dollars and thousands of man hours preparing for these exams. And then when it comes to their college essays, they phone them in. They're like, my numbers will speak for themselves. And they get a little bit cocky and a little bit blasé, and their essays end up hurting them. And they don't get into their colleges, and they scratch their heads and they think, what did I do wrong? And in reality, they don't realize that colleges care just as much about you as a human being than they do about you as like this, this grid of numbers. And so I've seen a lot of students get rejected from colleges they absolutely should have walked into, simply because they wrote crappy essays that misrepresented who they really were. And so again, that's one of the reasons why we designed College Essay Organizer, because again, in addition to the tool that streamlines, that gives students all their essay questions from the start, and the algorithm that we designed that shows how those questions overlap by theme, so that students can write fewer essays than they need to. We also do webcasts that show, that address the different aspects of the college admissions process, from financial aid to putting together your college list, and of course, writing winning essays. And then we have like a whole series of college essay samples that are relevant to their essay themes, so they can see what makes for a fantastic college essay. And then the other thing is, a lot of students who, there's a great quote that says, a great essay will heal the sick but won't raise the dead. So many students don't take the other approach and don't do much with respect to doing well on their standardized tests, and don't prepare much for their schoolwork, and then they end up writing these beautiful essays and think that's going to suffice. All the different factors come into play, and students just really need to kind of understand how this whole process works. Anyway, so.
Oh, sure, Dan. Those are some great insights. I mean, definitely, your essay is a chance to show colleges who you are. and get them to like you and set you apart to some extent, aside from the numbers. But at the same time, the essay won't necessarily, overcome an awful SAT score or awful GPA. It can kind of push you, pump you up a little bit.
Definitely.
Only so much, but still, you don't want to, phone it in and write it the night before.
Totally.
So true. No, thanks for sharing those stories. Definitely. I do want to, there's one thing that comes to mind. You write about the student, you talk about the student who, was, hacked into his school's computer system. And, there is a place on the application to some extent to, separate from the main essay to show the growth and maturation that you have afterwards as well, and show that you've grown after the process. And while maybe on your transfer is like a disciplinary thing, you've learned from the experience and won't be hacking your college's, computer system, right?
Right.
Oh,
exactly.
Totally.
And then, while you're saying that, I was thinking about one other thing is, again, this goes back to the misconceptions students have about how many essays are involved. Brown, for example, had 8 supplement essays just for Brown. Again, I think that is a great opportunity because whereas you're stressed out when you're taking your standardized test and your transcript is largely a thing of the past, this is the opportunity to really control how you're perceived by the colleges. But most students end up focusing so much of their energy and their time on the Common App personal statement, like the main essay, and don't give much thought to the supplemental essays. And we've spoken to the admissions officers, and in general, I mean, almost across the board, they all put much more importance on their supplement essays because that's their school's specific questions than they do on the Common App personal statement. Obviously, they're all important, and you need to kind of balance out the different types of stories you tell. When college is asking 4 or 5 different essay questions, but you really need to keep in mind that the supplement essays are so important and can be a game changer when it comes to they're making a decision.
No, for sure. I couldn't agree more, Dan. I mean, the schools are making the effort to construct a separate question aside from whatever the Common App folks came up with. It's a question that will often, reflect the school's personality and values and interests. And, you don't want to just, kind of half-ass it just because, I put so much time into the main essay. This essay only applies to one college. There are ways to reuse some of the content from those supplement essays as well, or at least the format. A lot of schools are asking that why our school in particular. And so you could have a formula where you talk about, I want to give a shout out to a specific professor or a specific class or a specific extracurricular, and it'll be different for each school, but you could still have the same, structure of sentence 1, sentence 2, sentence 3.
Totally.
Absolutely.
I think that's a fantastic point. It's a great way to, you hit on a number of points. First of all, it's a great way to save time when you realize that, when all the colleges are asking, why are you applying to our college or what do you want to do here? That's a great way to essentially write one phenomenal essay that you can then modify for all the different essays. But a lot of students say, well, how are you going to modify that essay when the college is really asking you why you're applying there? And therein lies the fatal flaw. Most students will instinctively regurgitate the college's own brochure and tell the college what the college already knows about itself when they're asked, why are you applying here? And that's a terrible essay. At the end of the day, all the questions need to be turned in on themselves so that you realize they're really asking about you. When they say, why are you applying to this college? They really want to know about your intellectual interests, your curiosities, your passions. And if you're not passionate about anything now, that's totally okay. But what are you curious about? And how will that college then cultivate those interests and curiosities? And then, even if they're asking, like if you're dealing with the University of Chicago, which always asks the quirkiest questions, when they're asking else about string or how do you feel about Wednesday? Again, most students don't realize that they're really asking, find a way to interpret this question so you're telling us something about yourself. So that's really the important takeaway from that in terms of when a college says, what are you interested in? Or why are you applying here? They really want to know about you.
Yeah, totally. You got to make it personal. You got to showcase, who you are. And you got to be creative and make a little bit of effort. If they throw at you, how do you feel about Wednesday? You got to work on that and figure out, a day, my average day in the life, or, it's the middle of the week, and get creative to some extent and show who you are. But yeah, those supplemental essays, you might not be able to reuse everything from them, but the effort you put into them is going to come across because schools are concerned with their yield in a lot of ways. So if they see your main essay is dynamite, the one that you're easily able to reuse for every school, but your supplemental ones, pale in comparison, they're going to think, we must be, 10th on this person's, ranking list. Your favorite one, you really should be putting in the effort. Your 10th one on the list, maybe you wouldn't put in as much, and the 10th ranked school on your personal ranking is going to realize that. So,
although if everyone wants a little laugh, you should Google John F. Kennedy, President Kennedy.
Oh, yeah.
Right, his admission essay to Harvard. It's hilarious. I mean, things have changed a lot in the last few decades, but it's amazing to think that guy ended up becoming president based on the pretty crappy essay you wrote.
Yeah. Well, if you're JFK, you get a little wiggle room, maybe.
Right. Why should we accept you? It's like, please see my surname.
Yes, exactly. Enough said. Totally, so true. So if you're not JFK, you don't have the massive family connections. You're gonna have to do a bit more. But we'll have to link to the JFK essay in the show notes too, because it's hilarious just to think about that for sure, no doubt. Are there any moments of inspiration or light bulb moments you've seen a student experience related to the college essay in some way?
I think the main thing, and again, apologies if this sounds overly corny or idealistic, but when I work with students on their college essays, I almost feel like it's like a therapy on steroids, because I get them to learn about themselves in a way and think about themselves in a way that they never have before. Those are, that kind of work makes for the most amazing, most compelling essays, the most, just creative and insightful stories. So basically, I love when students are writing their college essays and they manage to put into words or capture in a few sentences a sentiment they've always had about themselves, but have never really been able to capture, not in language at least. And for them to kind of hold these stories in their hands at the end of the process and think, wow, I understand myself in a way I never did before. And I'm sure these essays will help me get into a great college, but more than anything, they've allowed me to kind of get a sense of who I am. Because we live in a world where we are always running on to the next thing, busy being busy. It's very rare for us to kind of sit and have an introspective moment where we just kind of reflect on the day or reflect on our life and think, where am I headed? What am I doing? And I think this is the one rare opportunity teenagers have to do that. And so that's inspirational and that's revelatory to just see kids go through that awakening. And then beyond that, just to come up with stories that, again, they never thought were inside them and just put them forward and be like, this is who I am. This represents me. So I love all that. One of my favorite moments, and this goes back to the one bit of advice. Sorry if I'm getting ahead of us here.
No, go ahead.
The one real bit of advice I could give students, aside from create your free college essay organizer account today, would be to brainstorm a lot before you start writing the first word of what you think is going to be your essay. Just brainstorm and get the raw thoughts out. I think of this movie Afterlife. It's a film that I think is brilliant in concept and terrible in execution. So I don't recommend anyone watch it. Basically, the premise is, when you die, you go. And by the way, are you familiar with it?
No, I'm not.
When you die, you go to this holding cell of sorts, kind of like a purgatory, I guess, where you sit with a guidance counselor. I know you're always seeing these guidance counselors at your crossroads, and you sit with this counselor who reviews with you every single moment from your entire life, every thought, every feeling, every event, everything. And at the end of those 3 days, you have to pick one single memory to take with you into the afterlife to remind you of who you were when you lived on planet Earth. Wow. And it's a great concept. How do you capture your entire essence in one little memory? And, some people think, well, maybe I'll pick my wedding or I'll pick some big event where everyone's gathered together. But really the most beautiful stories are the littlest details that, tell you of who you are. I think of, this one student, which was really just one of the most beautiful moments that I had in working with students. She was doing this brainstorming and she was thinking about this exercise, in relation to this Afterlife movie. And she came up with this idea about how she said, I think this is a stupid idea. But by the way, whenever a student says that to me, I know the real gold is coming.
It's going to be great.
It's a stupid idea, but I was walking home from school the other day. She goes to a city in New York, a school in New York City. And basically she said, I was thinking about how I always walk home from school the same route every day. And my favorite moment of the year is that that instant that I realized that autumn is coming. Like, it's not necessarily the weather is getting colder or the leaves are changing. It's something in the air, this electricity and like the mood of New Yorkers themselves. And I know in that moment that like summer is over and autumn is beginning. And she said, I always love that moment and always makes me cry because, you know, she was a very philosophical person, amazing kid. And she said, you know, it reminds me that nothing's forever, that we're all going to fade. And, you know, I'm going to get older, I'm going to die, and the earth is going to go on, and then that's going to die. And nothing is forever. And it makes you savor and really appreciate like what you do have now, knowing that we're all mortal. We're all, you know, headed toward the same, this next destination. And it all started with that little moment when she felt something in the air walking home from school that autumn day. And she wrote this beautiful think piece about that. And that all started with brainstorming. And just, I really encourage kids to brainstorm as much as possible because no matter what story you think you're telling, there might be a better one hidden within you. And beyond that, even if it's a great story that you already have in mind, I promise you there are details that you're not going to remember or come up with if you just are so focused on writing the perfect essay. No one can write a perfect essay. There is no such thing. It's a process. And I really recommend you start messy and sloppy and foolishly and just get some random raw thoughts out there before you start crafting anything that sounds like a great college essay.
Wow, Dan, so many valuable insights and tips there. I mean, definitely the idea, you know, the littlest moment can reveal the deepest things about you. And again, it comes back to that reflection. You know, not everyone, you know, stops to think about as they're walking home from school, oh, wow, you know, this moment hits me, autumn's coming, and then run with that. So definitely, and that's something that you can't do the night before. You can't engage in that brainstorming and that reflection at the last minute. And the students who are going to communicate to colleges that they're ready to take on the college experience and the college challenge are the people who have that level of maturity that comes from seeing, you know, big concepts in little things. You know, maybe that, you know, you step on that leaf and you hear that crunch, or you see that, you know, that leaf change. You notice your first, you know, orange red leaf of the season. Oh wow, nothing's forever, and you kind of run with that and meditate on that. So definitely, you know, little moments can make for the most impressive, stellar essays. It doesn't have to be bragging about, you know, helping build a house, you know, halfway around the world in a developing country.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think you need to, like, a student needs to read a bunch of college essay samples to get a sense of what this genre is even about. Because, again, going back to my initial point, you know, most kids don't know the difference between a great essay and a great college admissions essay. It's such a unique genre that you learn once, and then for the most part, unless you're like us and you do this for a living, you forget it. But basically, like, you know, our site has like a bunch of essay samples from former students, and whether you're using those samples or picking up a book you find in a library or a bookstore or something you get from your English teacher, just read a bunch of different essay samples so that you know what's out there, you know what works, what doesn't, and you start getting a sense of what your story is going to be like.
Oh, for sure, definitely. It's a separate category from the essays you might be accustomed to writing for school. You know, it's got to get personal, and it's definitely got to communicate a lot of things that your average piece of writing won't do. So getting some examples is totally key.
Yeah.
Definitely. I want to shift gears now, Dan, and move into my favorite part of the interview, which is the lightning round. I'm going to ask you some rapid-fire questions. You give me some rapid-fire responses. Are you ready?
I don't know, but I guess that's the whole point. I should be ready, right?
Yeah, we'll just fire them at you. All right.
Bring it on.
Great. Just to recap, what's your number one piece of advice for the college admissions process?
Start early and pace yourself so that you can really let that creativity come out. Because any great thinker will tell you creativity doesn't just happen. It needs to be marinated and worked out.
Yeah, for sure. Could you share with us one habit that you believe contributes to admissions success?
I think strategy is the key. I think a lot of people think, like misunderstand how the whole admissions process works, and they think they need to be this Renaissance student who's amazing at everything. When in reality, colleges are accepting some engineers, some foreign language applicants, some people who love literature. You need to position yourself in a way that highlights your strengths based on your test scores, your transcript, your teacher recommendations, and your college essays. So apply strategically. Don't just apply as this, you know, broad catch-all applicant who has no clue who he or she wants to be.
Totally. So key. Could you share with us one online admissions resource that you absolutely love?
I am a fan of College Prowler, collegeprowler.com. It's a good website that gives insight to the colleges from the student's point of view, as opposed to the glossed over, well manicured version that the colleges themselves put out. And it allows you to interact. Obviously, take it all with a grain of salt, because most people, a lot of people will publish stuff that's just subjective and pertinent to their lives, doesn't represent the college itself. But I think, again, it goes back to just getting as much information about the college process as possible. collegeprowler.com.
Yeah, definitely getting that wide variety, that sample, unfiltered, not just the sanitized stuff the colleges put out. Oh. Totally. What's one book that you believe no college applicant should be without?
This is going to be a horrible recommendation, but because it has nothing to do with college admissions.
That's fine.
But I'm going to say Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse.
Yeah.
Beautiful book just about understanding yourself and understanding the stories that appear in your lifetime for yourself. Because I think it'll teach people about themselves, and it will, by extension, allow them to write better stories about who they are. Siddhartha.
Definitely, getting that reflection. Siddhartha, we'll link to it in the show notes also. But thanks for mentioning it, Dan. What's next for you? What are you working on these days?
We are doing a lot of big partnerships with College Essay Organizer, with other organizations, branching out to, we have a lot of big schools using us now. And, we have hundreds of independent consultants who use us, and obviously tens of thousands of individual students who find their way to us. So we're doing a lot of partnerships. My tutoring company, Metro Academic Prep, which is based in New York City, and we work with students via Skype throughout the world. We're doing a lot of new programs, a lot of them in relation to college essays, actually. And to be honest, I'm learning how to organize my own time better, so that I can spend more time with my young son and my wife, and enjoy the fruits of all of our labor. But I think aside from that, I'm also I started off as a writer, and I'm working on that novel that will never be finished, but I love writing it. Yeah. So I think my novel is my next big jab.
Awesome. Well, glad you're keeping it all organized. Again, where can folks find you online?
Find me. If you go to collegeessayorganizer.com or metroacademicprep.com, you can find out how to reach me. But as far as what I'm doing myself online, I waste hours on ebaumsworld.com.
We'll have folks check you out at collegeessayorganizer.com and Metro Academic Prep. Don't go to eBaum's World. You'll waste your time, and you'll never get your college essays done. Well, thanks again for all your tips, Dan. Really appreciate your time.
I loved it. Absolutely. And good luck to everybody out there. And enjoy it. Like I said, you're applying to college. You're going to have the best time of your life. Enjoy the journey.
Definitely. All right. Thanks again, Dan. We'll have to have you back sometime. Take care.
Thanks so much, Steve.
Thanks for listening to College Admissions Toolbox. Head over to www.collegeadmissionstoolbox.com to get more free tools and resources that will help you get into the colleges of your dreams. I started listening to podcasts and audiobooks because I felt like I didn't have enough time to sit down and read everything on my list. Since then, I've managed to quote-unquote read dozens of books just by listening to them while I'm doing other stuff. One audiobook I absolutely love is The Gatekeepers. It's by a reporter who followed an admission officer at Wesleyan for almost a full year. In The Gatekeepers, he shares everything he learned on the inside. Just go to collegeadmissionstoolbox.com/audiobook and you'll be able to choose any free audiobook you'd like.